Well, you turned into part 2 of What If Deku had Ultra Instinct. That means you probably liked it, and if you did, go back to the video in case you didn't like it already, like the video, like this one, tell a friend to tell another friend, and enjoy the video.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Jumping back into where I had left off in the previous part with the cliffhanger, All Might would look towards Midoriya's direction as he would say, "Now look here, Midoriya, just because we're training doesn't mean I'm gonna take it easy on you. You need to try your best and avoid getting injured. Is that alright with you?" Izuku would look at him and then say, "Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not." He gets into fighting position as All Might would as well, and immediately the battle would start with Izuku rushing in at All Might's direction. All Might would throw a punch, Izuku would close and open his eyes, and his body would react. It's as if he dodged it perfectly. Izuku would get 0 damage to his body, and he would proceed to essentially start dodging all of All Might's punches. Obviously, All Might is holding back quite heavily just to keep things even, since at this point, Izuku only has access to about 15% full cowling, I believe is what I said on the previous part. And Izuku is, well, trying to do his best. He would begin amping up full cowling just a little bit more, and his body would begin to slightly be able to keep up with it. He feels a little bit of tension whenever he's using full cowling, but he's doing his best not to show it. He would begin getting into the same like dodge thing with All Might, and All Might would begin to slightly amp up the pressure to the point where it would become increasingly harder for Izuku to dodge one of his blows, but eventually Izuku would duck under one of All Might's hits and punch him straight at the side of the gut where his injury's at with a full 15% smash. He hits All Might and All Might would cough out blood before like being sent back flying, and then he would get back up onto one knee as he would say, "Right, Midoriya." He would get back up as he would say, "Fine." He would tap into 100% and rush into Midoriya before he could even react. And even with Ultra Instinct, Izuku would slightly be able to dodge by a millimeter. After Izuku dodges, it's as if his Ultra Instinct state went away, and Izuku would put both arms in front of his face as to block All Might's huge haymaker he's about to throw, and he would get sent flying into the ocean, as Izuku would pretty much be sent into the air. And in the air, he would just be thinking, "Why'd you take it so far, All Might?" As he would crash into the water, and Izuku would cough back up, being like, "All Might," as he begins trying to swim back to shore, and All Might would think to himself that he might have overdone it just a little bit. Izuku would get onto the beach and would say, "You think, All Might?" As All Might would begin laughing, and he would say, "Ah, shucks, young Midori, I apologize for that." But Izuku would just be like, "Whatever, All Might, don't worry about it. So what do we do now?" All Might would look at him and say, "Well, from the progress you're making so far, it appears that for the first time forever, I don't know if you noticed it, but you attacked. Were you still using Ultra Instinct?" Izuku would look at him and say, Yeah, I think so, I'm not sure." And All Might would look towards him as he would say, "Well, that's what we're going to continue working on. Once a day from now on, we're going to begin sparring every single day until you're able to actually attack back in the state of Ultra Instinct. We're going to try to make it so that you can actually last more than about 2 minutes in that state. And we're also going to be working on full cowling so you can heighten that percentage. For the next couple of months, that's all we'll be doing. Go home for today, get some rest, and then we'll pick this up tomorrow." Izuku would look at him and say, "Understood, All Might. See you tomorrow." As All Might would wave to him, and in a flash, the first day of, well, not the first day, but his exam day for taking the entrance exam would arrive, almost as if it happened from that day to the next. Izuku would get dropped off by his mother Inko at the doors, and when he arrives there, he would just be walking, spots a girl with some brunette hair, or brownish hair, sorry. And as he does this, he just thinks nothing of it. He continues walking inside until suddenly the girl would pretty much fall. And Izuku would be like, "Whoa, you good?" As he catches her, and she immediately starts blushing. She's like, yeah, thanks." As Izuku's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. It was just my quirk. I figured it was bad luck to trip on the first day." He waves bye to her and walks into the entrance exam place, as he proceeds to get a really high score. I'd say about like 10 points extra than what he got in the original. And yeah, that's that. When it comes to the robot portion, after Ida does his whole little calling himself out and making President Mike be annoyed by him and apologizing, they would all take the exam. Izuku, like I said, passed, and he's outside simply waiting for the proctor to let everybody do their thing. Eventually though, Izuku would get quite tired of being in the same spot, and so he would decide to move towards the front of the area. This is when a strange boy with blue hair would stop him and be like, "Hey, you're not supposed to go over there." Izuku would look at him and say, "What are you talking about? I'm just trying to get to the front." And Ida would say, "No, I know you're trying to distract that girl. Leave her alone." As Izuku looks at her and says, "Dude, back off." He would push Ida off of him, and Ida would get quite angry before saying, "I tried doing this the nice way, but if you're not going to cooperate, then I guess I'm going to have to use force." As he holds onto Izuku's shoulder and begins squeezing. Izuku would look to Ida as he simply says, "Just try it." But President Mike would say over the intercom, being like, "Boys, it's not time to fight. After all, go, go, go!" He begins to tell everybody to just get ready. And then Izuku and Ida would look at each other before then rushing off, with Izuku actually matching Ida's speed, as he's trying to show off and show Izuku that he's faster, but Izuku's actually keeping up. Ida would get quite angry at this, and Izuku would then go towards a robot as he activates Ultra Instinct and dodges out of the robot's way before coming in and counterattacking and essentially going on to do that with every single robot that he encounters, using his martial arts skills and super strength to pretty much be able to just destroy these robots as easy as possible. If you guys remember, let's see. As Izuku, who had more percentage of One For All when they went on the trip with David Shield on the movie My Hero Academia 2 Heroes, or was it My Hero? I don't know. But one of the movies where the villain was the guy who could manipulate metal, what ends up happening is essentially Izuku and Bakugo and Todoroki and them end up doing this like robot battle thing where they end up seeing how far they've progressed. Lo and behold, Izuku was actually able to destroy a ton of robots with a small percentage of One For All. So essentially Izuku using One For All would just go through, using martial arts as well as his Ultra Instinct to dodge out of every single one of the robot attacks, would pretty much begin acing everything, doing as well as he could possibly do, and eventually getting a total score of like, let's say 91 robot points, until eventually we would hear rumbling. Now, when Izuku hears rumbling, he would immediately turn towards the side where he hears a bunch of people running and screaming, and he would see a bunch of the hero students beginning to run away from a strange rumbling noise. Out of the corner of his eye, he notices a girl underneath some rubble screaming for help, and it's as if Izuku activated Ultra Instinct in that same moment. He begins rushing in, and the only thing that he sees is Uraraka. As the robot is just about to step over her, Izuku activates full cowling as fast as he possibly could, pushing it to his new heightened state, which is now 25%. And he begins rushing as fast as he could, as in an instant, Deku hits the rumble off of Uraraka, grabs her and gets her out of the way before he then runs to the side of a building and begins jumping on top, side to side to side, leaping off of it in American Ninja Warrior style, to the point where he finally makes it to the top, puts Uraraka down and asks her if she's okay. She would inform him that her ankle's a little hurt, and Izuku puts her on his back like piggyback riding style, as he begins to pretty much jump from building to building until he finally makes it to Recovery Girl, and that's when the exam would end. Izuku would be granted about 60 rescue points for that, and bringing his grand total score to 151 robot points, I believe it was. That said, Izuku after that would end up having to wait, just waiting. And since this time Izuku actually did destroy some robots, he's not exactly going to be thinking, "Oh my god, I didn't pass. Instead, he's actually really excited for the results, and so is Inko, knowing that her son this time around actually does have a quirk. That said, she would proceed to simply run into Izuku's room one day whenever the results ended up arriving, and she'd be like, Izuku, the results are here." Izuku would look at her and say, "Oh, great, mom. Well, come here. You just play them in front of both of us." And from here, we get clips of Izuku using his quirk and destroying robots. As Inko watches this, and she's like, "Wow, Izuku, I didn't know you were that strong." Izuku just is like, "Yeah, I've been training a little bit." and All Might would look to Izuku on the screen before saying he passed, that he got this many rescue points, yada yada yada. Eventually, Inko is like, I'm so proud of you, Izuku. What do we do to celebrate? Izuku says that he would like for her to make a pretty big feast, and she says, I'm on it. I'm gonna go shopping right now. She goes to get a bunch of groceries and makes Izuku's favorite dinner. And from here, the day would end, until eventually, Izuku would receive a text from All Might saying, sorry kid, I've been a little busy with my entrance to UA. As Izuku would look to the text, he ends up meeting All Might on Dagoma Beach, where All Might would express his gratitude for him taking the quirk and how far he's come, telling him that he needs to do his best at UA and go plus ultra, breaking his limits every time, telling him that while he has a very good grasp of his quirk now, he still has a long ways to go, and telling him that he'll be with him every step of the way. Izuku would be pretty happy, and they would go out for some ice cream before All Might would end up dropping Izuku off in this extremely luxurious giant car that Inko sees Izuku get out of, and she's like, Izuku, who is that? Izuku would look at her and say, oh, yeah, mom, sorry about it, but I never did quite introduce you to him, right? Inko's like, who? And All Might would step out of the car and be like, hello, Miss Midoriya. And she pretty much passes out. When she wakes up, she would see All Might and Izuku standing over her, and she's like, Izuku? Is that who I think it is? Izuku would look at her and say, yeah, mom, it's All Might. And from here, she's like, All Might? She's extremely ecstatic, just like Izuku would be. And from here, Izuku would be like, Mom, you're embarrassing me. Inko would be like, shit, get out of here, Izuku. Mom could never embarrass your son. From here, she would invite All Might in for some dinner, and Deku would end up briefing her on how he's been training with All Might for the past couple of months, with her being like, how come you never told me, Izuku? And excuse this noise because I'm about to move my chair. But she'd be like, why'd you never tell me, Izuku? And Izuku would be like, well, Mom, I kind of wanted it to be a surprise, but I mean, at least I'm telling you now. Inko would be like, yeah, I guess. And from here, Izuku would go on to essentially just have a nice little dinner, and the very next day, he would get dropped off by All Might at UA, getting there about an hour early before class starts, being one of the first people to actually arrive in the classroom. When he does sit there, he simply just sits in the back area, and he's just waiting for the teacher to finally get up and start teaching them. Seeing Izuku was one of the only people to actually notice, Aizawa was sitting in the back in a sleeping bag. He would just sit there quietly on his phone, just scrolling through TikToks, scrolling through YouTube on this really nice guy Zethers channel, just subscribing, pressing the like button on all his videos, seeing as it helps with the algorithm. And he's doing his thing. And from here, people start to get into the classroom. Eventually, a kid by the name of Katsuki Bakugo would arrive, and when Izuku sees him, he simply sighs. He's just like, what are you doing here? Thinking that to himself, as Bakugo looks towards Izuku, gives him a scowl, and thinks to himself how a loser like him could have possibly gotten into the school. He sits down and doesn't really cause a scene until eventually Ito would come in and begin to reprimand him on, what he's doing with his feet and how this is UA property. You know what I mean? Bakugo would look to him as he would say, stop having such a stick up your ass, dude. Go sit down at your desk and leave me alone. I already have problems to deal with right now. As Ito would say, how dare you? But Bakugo would look at him and be like, get lost, loser. As from here, Ito would begin to argue with him, and eventually Aizawa would wake up to the commotion, saying it took you guys 8 seconds to get ready. Throw these on and meet me outside. The entire class would do so, and from here, Aizawa would end up tossing the ball towards Deku's direction, telling him to throw this. Izuku would say, so what are the rules? Aizawa looks at him and says, just stay in the circle, throw it as far as you can. I'm gonna track it. And from here, Izuku activates full cowling about 26%, pushing it a little further, throwing the ball as far as he possibly could, which I genuinely don't know what that would be. I mean, he throws it with 26% full cowling with his arm. I really don't know how far it is, but just know it's pretty far. As soon as the class sees this, they would begin to say, oh, that looks like fun. And from here, Aizawa turns to them before issuing the challenge of whoever's last is getting expelled. After hearing this, the entire class would switch tunes and they would be like, yo, that's not fair. You can't do that to us. But Aizawa looks at them and says, oh, and natural disasters are, and villains are fair. This world is full of unfairness, and it's your job to combat this unfairness, before going on to have the rest of the little events go down. We start with the 50-meter dash. Alright, as soon as Aizawa would tell everybody what's what, they would all just go to the 50-meter dash line, and from here, Izuku would clear this so damn fast that it's not even funny. He ends up getting 2 seconds in terms of the 50-meter dash. When it comes to the grip strength test, Izuku would actually end up squeezing it as hard as he can, almost shattering it, but not quite, seeing as his strength isn't quite all the way up there quite yet, but he ends up actually beating Dupli arms in this event. The next one would be the standing long jump, and when it comes to this, Izuku would actually end up clearing the sandbox very, very easily. The next event being the ball throw, with Izuku pretty much getting the same score that he got the first time, and then they would have their final test, which is the long distance run, seated toe touch, sit-ups, and a couple of push-ups and stuff like that. Afterwards, the results would be posted, and the person who have actually ended up coming in last place would end up being, who should end up coming in last? I think Invisible Girl, because if we do keep it in mind, Invisible Girl is basically just a normal human. Mineta at least had that one event of the side-to-side step, so instead of Mineta being the one who gets expelled this time around, the person who they actually end up expelling from UA is Invisible Girl. However, what ends up happening is essentially Aizawa takes her away, tells her that she needs to step her game up or else she's really going to get expelled, and she comes back with tears in her face and a smile, but nobody could really tell. They think that she'd never return, but Aizawa ends up informing them that, oh yeah, she's right here next to him. Everybody would be like, oh, so you didn't expel her? And Aizawa would say she has potential, and with a quirk like hers, there's no way UA could just let somebody like that go. You guys, however, you in particular, he points to Mineta and says that he better get his act together, no more perviness. He heard about what happened in the changing rooms. Mineta would be terrified at this and say, I'm sorry. And from here, Aizawa would tell everybody that they're free to go home. Everybody would do so, and we would have an entire week worth of the entirety of UA just kind of doing their own thing, chilling, you know what I mean? Like, they're just vibing. And actually, no, not a whole week, but about 1 to 2 days worth of just normal school, hero training with Aizawa after it. You guys get the point. But eventually, on the 4th day of UA, they would end up being greeted to nobody in the classroom. When they walk in, they begin wondering, yo, who's gonna teach us today? Aizawa's never late. But suddenly, from the door, we hear All Might's All Might's theme music playing, as All Might would bust in the room being like, I am here, before the class would abruptly freak out and begin to be extremely ecstatic. From here, All Might would then begin to tell them all that he's going to be their teacher for the day, and Uraraka would actually ask if he's going to be expelling them like Aizawa will. And All Might would say, nah, that's just Aizawa, before he then clicks a button and all of their pro hero costumes would be revealed. Before All Might would say that to be a pro, you have to look like a pro. Before all of them go into their changing rooms and they're all greeted to All Might on the outside, where they then go on to pick their raffle tickets and see who exactly they're going to be fighting against. When it comes to Izuku's teammate, I'm still going to be keeping it as Uraraka, not because it's going to be the ship payoff, seeing as I don't really think I'm going to be doing a ship in this version, but, you know, nonetheless, it would end up being Uraraka. The next person who they actually have to fight against is going to be, hold on, let me click this random generator. It's going to be Kirishima. And then the other one is gonna be, let's see. Tokiyami. Okay, that's actually not bad. Tokiyami and Kirishima, hey, that's solid. But from here, you know, the teams are announced, and Kirishima and Tokiyami would actually be told that they're going to actually be the villains. From here, Izuku and Uraraka would decide that all they have to do is get a bomb. Easy enough. And from here, what they would end up doing is creating a plan to simply ambush them together. Izuku would ask Uraraka what her quirk can do and what the advantages of it are, as well as the disadvantages are. And Uraraka would end up informing him of them, before Izuku says, alright, that's definitely interesting. Pretty sure they're going to move all the things that you can use to attack, so how are we going to do this? I'm not sure, but for now, let's just rush in, ambush them, and whatever happens, happens. Uraraka looks at him, she's like, right! And from here, Izuku and Uraraka would go up the stairs and climb up each and every level, checking each room to see if they're in there, until eventually they end up arriving to the room that they're looking for. Eventually, Kirishima and Tokiyami would both get ready. As Kirishima would harden, Tokiyami would use his Dark Shadow quirk, and they would say, you're not getting this bomb, before Izuku would smirk and then activate full cowling, before then looking to them and saying, yeah right, as he would rush in and immediately begin dodging all of Kirishima's blows, kicking him away with full cowling, sending Kirishima back. As from here, he ends up getting in front of Dark Shadow, who would hit Deku away, as Deku lost some concentration since he got a little too cocky. And from here, Izuku would roll on the ground as they would look towards Uraraka's direction, who would be scared and be like, Izuku, anytime now for your plan would be good. As Izuku would get back up and rush in as he activates 25% full cowling this time and runs in. As from here, he ends up punching Dark Shadow a bunch of times over and over as much as he possibly can, activating Ultra Instinct so his aura could become hot and visible. And this would actually end up scaring Tokiyami away, with Izuku noticing, light, he's afraid of light. He rushes towards one of the walls and Kirishima would be standing in his way, saying, "You're not going anywhere," before Izuku would dodge out of the way of Kirishima's hit and break the wall, leading to a bunch of light coming in, weakening Kirishima just enough so that Izuku could end up actually fighting him and not having that much of a hard time. Kirishima would look at him before saying, "Damn, he figured out your weakness." And from here, they would both get distracted with Deku, as Deku looks at Uraraka, winks at her, and she rushes towards the bomb as she jumps up into the air and goes in to try to hug it. And unfortunately, Tokiyami and Kirishima would just watch as they're like, "No!" Like for part 3.